Hi, so my name's Luca Valli and I'm from Leamington Spa, which is in Warwickshire, which is close to Coventry and Birmingham. So I'm just going to sort of talk about my background a little bit and how I managed to get into rent to rent and Airbnb management. So at the moment, I currently have 34 units, which are both rent to rent and Airbnb management properties, both doing Airbnb. So, growing up from the age of around 14 to 22, 23, I used to go out, used to party a lot, used to drink. So, I sort of got distracted from ever really thinking about what I wanted to do. Um, I always knew that I wanted to have my own business, and I had multiple different jobs growing up. So, I've done everything from labouring to working for Virgin Media to being a bartender to window cleaning, which I really think has benefited me because I've seen all different people at all different types of ages, and it sort of made me realize that I always wanted to work for myself. So I went to university at the age of 21 for 2 years and I did a physical education degree. So I didn't actually do a lot of work when I was there. I basically used it as a social thing. But I think it was good that I actually got took away from my area so I could sort of think for myself. And it made me realize that I needed to sort of concentrate on my future. So when I got back, I started watching different YouTube videos and I came across a few people like Samuel Leeds, Simon Smith, and I started looking into different property strategies. So I joined a few communities and I started to learn about rent to rent. And I thought rent to rent was a great strategy because it was very little money down and it also felt like something that I could easily do. So yeah, I carried on watching YouTube videos. I then got a job on HS2 as a dumper driver. So this was very ideal as I was in a cab, a nice warm cab, could charge my phone, and I got to spend a lot of time learning about rent to rent and focusing on how I was going to be able to leave my job to then spend time with my family and build a successful business. So I set up my company in October 2022 without any experience. I just set it up because I knew that it would give me a driving factor. And I did a course which I spent about £2,500 on, which then was a lot of money. And this was like a step by step get your first Airbnb property within 6 months. So I literally followed everything on that. And I was messaging at least 10 landlords every single day, trying to get viewings, trying to get my first property. And I actually secured my first property in May 2023. So set up the business October 2022. First property across the line in May 2023. And this was a rent to rent property. And this was a 6 bedroom property. And the rent on it was £2,500, which everyone thought I was crazy because I'd gone ahead with this property. However, at the time, my partner was about to give birth. So, with all the noise going on, I backed out. However, I kept a good relationship with the landlord. So we had our first daughter, and then that's what really gave me the driving factor to like go out and get another property. My daughter was born. I was still at work, but that sort of ignited the fire for me even more because I knew I wanted to be able to spend more time with my daughter. So I managed to get my first rent to rent property in October, which was actually through a friend who was moving out of the property. So I then took that on as a rent to rent property, and that started to make me around £1,000 per month. I managed to get a few month booking on that straight away. I then went and got another unit, which was in Leeds. So this was in December now, November, December time. And this was a 2 bed apartment on Leeds docks. So it had like a balcony, and the rent on that was around £1,500, but that didn't really go to plan. So that was my second property, and that was obviously 2 hours away from where I live. So I'm based in Leamington Spa, which is close to Coventry and Birmingham. So it's like in the middle of England. However, the Leeds property I just took on was 2 hours away. So, and it also turns out that you're actually not allowed to do Airbnb. You're not allowed to do short-term lets because it was in an apartment building, which on the lease, it said you're not allowed to do short-term lets. So I ended up having the council message me, and I had to shut down the property. That property actually came furnished, and so there was a little bit of a setup cost, but I also lost out on around 5 to 6 months worth of bookings. Obviously, I spent a lot of time setting it up, having the photography done, and all that stuff. I also paid a deposit on that and a month's rent, so that was already £5,000 that I'd spent on it. But the landlord didn't tell me that you weren't allowed to do Airbnb, and I was also very new to Airbnb. So I ended up giving the keys back to that, I think, in January time, and then I took on another property in Coventry, which was through an estate agent that I built up a relationship with, and he actually put his trust in me and gave me a property, and that was a 3-bed property, and the rent on that was £1,300 per month. Again, it wasn't the best property, and I was working at the time, so I was actually having to put a bit of my own money into the property because I didn't really know what I was doing. So if I'd have had like a mentor or something, then it would have definitely helped. One of the reasons I think was the property wasn't really suitable for serviced accommodation. It was a terraced house. There was neighbours which were always looking in, and the neighbours weren't happy that we were doing Airbnb at the property, so that caused a little bit of conflict. But I kept that property on. It did end up to have some good months. I kept that on for around 5 months, 6 months, and then we came to a mutual agreement that I was going to hand the property back. And then I got back in touch with the original guy that I was going to take on the property in May, the one which I backed out from. I got in contact with him, and I explained the situation, how I've now actually I've had a few properties, I've got good experience, and I asked him if he had any other properties available. So he did have a property available, and I went and viewed it, and I offered a price. So it was a 3-bed, and I offered £1,200, and he wanted more. So I then said to him, well, I can manage the property for you for a fee. So we did that. So that means no setup cost. The client furnishes the property, he pays for everything. I just manage the property and take 15% of the monthly revenue. So we take care of the maintenance. However, he is billed for the maintenance, any of the maintenance costs. So I started to manage the property for him, and it did really well. It was doing around £3,500 a month, which is insane because he should have only really got around £1,200. So did a really good job for him. And then I found another property which was on open rent, which is a 2-bed. Bearing in mind, I was calling up landlords every day. I was messaging 10 landlords a day, calling landlords up non-stop on Facebook Marketplace, Gumtree, Open Rent, just trying to make things work, trying to get more properties, and eventually I had a lot of luck. I used to do all the viewings after work, so I'd usually go to the viewings in my work clothes, and then I'd quickly get changed in the car before. And then I met this landlord who had multiple properties. So this was a 2-bed property in Warwick. It was perfect. It was a detached property. It had a driveway, which is what I look for. And it was for a very good price. It was up for around £1,200. So I messaged the landlord, had no reply. Messaged again, no reply. Messaged for the 3rd time, and he eventually messaged back. I explained what it was I wanted to do, and he said he wasn't interested. And I said to him, can we have a phone call? So then we had a phone call, and I said to him, look, can we meet at the property? I just want to have a chat with you, see if I can help you in any way. And then he agreed. I met him at the property, sat down with him and his dad, And it turns out that they actually were doing Airbnb with 6 of the properties. So that's when I sat down with him and just said to him, look, I can help you free up your time, because I had all the systems in place, which they didn't. So they were doing manual check-ins, they were doing manual communication. So that's when I said to them, look, I can literally make your life easy. I'll handle everything. And then they give me a chance with that property, and I actually staged that property for him. So I organised for all the furnishings, styled the property, and I did a really good job of it, and he was really happy with that. The property then went on to perform really well, doing around £2,500 a month, which is obviously really good compared to the £1,200 he would have got just on a standard buy-to-let. So that formed a really good relationship, and did a really good job with him. So then he went on to give me six of the properties. I then went on and sourced one of my other rent-to-rents, which is in Warwick. And then I took on another rent-to-rent through the estate agent, and then it just sort of spiraled. And then today I'm at around 34 units in total. But the breaking point for me was in June 2024. So I carried on working full time until June 2024. So I was working at my job and I was doing this, the management on the side. So I'd spend a lot of time, obviously, in the day working on the business, and then when I got home, I'd spend time on the business as well. But so I found out my missus was we were having a child who was due to be born in June 2024. So literally, so in May, I said to her, look, I'm gonna leave work and then go full time into the business. So I think at this point I probably only had about 4 or 5 properties. So I was probably making around £3,000 profit per month. I think there was 3 rent-to-rents and then there was 2 management properties. So I just about replaced my income, and then I took the leap to go full time, and then that's sort of when everything just spiraled. Really, I just went full time into everything. Had no safety net, and then just went all out in it really. And then it just spiraled from there. Started to take on larger units and had real success with large units. So I mean, I've got a 6-bed property which makes around £2,000 to £3,000 profit a month. I've got another new 6-bed which is doing around £3,000 a month. And then I've got a few 3-beds which do £1,000 a month. 4-bed which does £1,500 a month. And then on top of that, I've got around 20 management properties which bring in a nice income each month. So it just definitely give me the. I feel like I work the best when I'm under pressure. So that was just definitely meant for me to really go for it. And also I really value time with my family, and especially while the children are so young. I think it's so important to spend as much time with them as possible, and get to obviously watch them grow up. And I also wanted to build something for my family, and for the future. And I always knew that's what I wanted to do. And I feel like the way that I managed to do that was to have a clear goal in sight. And the goal was to be able to leave my job, but obviously have a business which works and which makes me enough money to be able to spend time with my family.